All right, beautiful. So, as promised, we can now go a little bit deeper on the snowflake rule in regards to the hybrid that I've discussed of what I circled here as kind of orange. Okay, so primarily, basically dealing with these little dots that I drew. These little dots here, these little dots here. That's primarily what this is going to focus on very quickly. So, as we all understand, the general delivery of a market, in the event that it's a good market, the composite operators behind it, we're looking for the move to continue or to keep making its move, is going to be a snowflake of every other move that's occurred. So, on average, most moves, as I've discussed over and over and over again, are going to occur within the realm of what you've seen over and over and over again in this portal so far. Stage ones and twos, anticipation of the higher low, right? With a flush out, that becomes an accumulation. MBs get built up, price starts going quicker. Based MBs start to form. Stage one, stage two, stage one, stage twos, etc. So, in this example right here, okay, we're looking at the full cycle. Now we're going to go over the full cycle again with more examples. However, right now I want to bring our attention specifically to this orange area here, right here, this whole orange area with the specific dots. So the dots are what really create and give this hybrid snowflake to the overall market. What I mean by this is any market, if we were to draw out this cycle in itself, is going to do something along these lines here pretty much every single time until it undergoes failure. That's really all that's going to happen. So in the event of a bullish market, honestly, this is all you're going to see. So what we're going to do is we're going to move over here to the left for a second. We're going to copy all of this very quickly, just like this. We're going to copy all this over. And we're going to look at a few examples of what this can actually look like, okay? So if we try to draw this out, let's envision what a market may look like. And this is going to explain this idea of fractals as well as the idea of hybrids and snowflakes very, very well before we look at real action. So a major flush. Oftentimes a move will start from a major flush. No shit. So let's just assume we had some kind of move, whatever move it might have been, and then you had a major flush out. Okay, so prices came down very heavily, and all of a sudden, you started building some kind of stage one through anticipation of higher low. Whether that was built here, or whether that was built through some inside leg that maybe went up, came down for maybe a flush out, or what you may have labeled also as a major flush. So this could be labeled as a major flush, and this could be labeled as a major flush. Either one could be fine. So let's assume this is what happened. All right, let's say this is instance one, or an example. This is just example, i.e. example one, okay? Screwed the labels, one. So you get a flush, okay? There's your flush. Let's just say that's a flush. Then in green, let's say you get that stage one anticipation of the higher low. So it kind of happens here, and all of a sudden you start that accumulation. Maybe some MBs begin to build, and then you get an MB, and from there you start a stage two. So stage two is going to come from that, and a stage two begins. Oftentimes, almost any move, any trending move, and you'll be able to go and prove this to yourself by finding any move that has trended and using the tools that you're going to have access to and the software that you have access to actually find moves that might be trending or still trending. You can go and find something that's been trending or has started to trend, and you'll see some form of this occurring to where the stage two has now begun. Now, from here, a few things can happen, right? One of the things that can happen, as we've discussed before, is that you get normal failure, right? So you just have price maybe fail down, reflush out, and then doesn't set anything up, and it just kind of it just goes into whatever, a pocket of doing nothing. So let's ignore that aspect right now because we kind of understood that as one of the aspects right here. So failure is always failure is always something that can occur at any point within a cycle like this. That's something just to remember for permanently, okay? So you get this stage two out of this move. Here it is. After this stage one right here had occurred. So we have the stage one, stage two, and we assume that it's going to continue this given move. Now, one way you can do that is through another flush. So let's assume another flush comes in, right? Some kind of flush enters the market, and a new stage one and stage two begins. So maybe this flush ends up being kind of this larger one that maybe anticipates the higher low or comes just to the low of it or very close, right? So again, just meeting that anticipation of the higher low rule that you learned about, thereby putting in likely, if price maintains its push because it isn't failing, starts new MBs higher, maybe makes another MB here, right? And then starts moving higher. Then once again, we've created a stage one and a stage two, right? And now, as you've seen in some other examples, this can now repeat indefinitely. We might see now for price will go, flush out again with a stage one, start a stage one, start some kind of stage one, and start another stage two higher, and start a stage one, kind of fall down, start a stage two, and move higher. And it'll do this until some next, so this is all of this orange area. So this orange area is what is represented, okay, right here when you saw me draw that in. Okay, so what's actually happening here is you're having these three little dots repeat. So you're having the repetition of stage 1 into 2, stage 1 into 2, stage 1 into 2, and it's repeating. It's indefinite. 1, 2, 3. Right? It keeps going. It's indefinite. You don't know when it's going to end. It just keeps going. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 1, stage 2, stage 1, stage 2. So this is one variant of a market that might be happening, and then all of a sudden you get true failure, right? And then maybe it just goes haywire and doesn't really do anything for a while, and this is what a market ends up being, or just falls off, and then it kind of becomes a market that's hard to watch because it's just not doing anything. So this is one variant, and that's your next major flush. That could lead to a new stage 1, but in this case it doesn't, right? Another variant, right, is that we again start with some kind of flush or some kind of stage 1. So again, you might have had a market that's going down for a while, or a market that's just kind of been slipping up, and then all of a sudden you get a major flush. And from there, let's say that had built that anticipation of the higher low, and from there came maybe a nice little MB there, and then another MB started to form here. And then let's say for whatever reason this wasn't the start of that stage 1, or that stage 1 became larger, as we've spoken about before, and then price maybe flushed out again, right? If price had flushed out again here, what you might notice is it starts to deliver an aspect of what's here, right? So that's just an example of one of these snowflakes where the same move is somewhat occurring, but it might occur a little bit differently. So let's just say that didn't happen. Let's just say the MBs are forming. You have MB1, another MB here. Price begins to go. Maybe it minorly flushes out and then builds another MB1, MB2, and then starts making a move, let's say, right? And starts making a move. There we go. So again, now at this point, we've reached this stage, around this stage in the overall process. All right, so what we've done is we've created that major flush. We've created some kind of stage 1 with anticipation of a higher low. We made a mini stage 2. We maybe even made a stage 1 here, and we've started a stage 2. So if anything, we've actually reached some of the beginning principles of the orange, right? Where you have the stage 1, stage 2 now delivering. And then from here, just like we've spoken about before already, over and over again, price could have just simply failed and become a non-factor and not an important market to watch or an asset to watch, because it just failed, right? Because trends do fail. They don't always go, but when they go, they're very rewarding. Now, let's just say that did not happen. So there's no failure, right? We're doing these as examples of no failure. What you might get is a version of this fractal 1 and 2, because what's happening, as you've seen in prior examples, is price is also delivering a 1 into 2, a 1 into 2, a 1 into 2. And then all of a sudden, you might notice that this market just goes on a 1 into 2, a 1 into 2, a 1, maybe it's a little bit deeper, 1 into 2, right? And all of a sudden you start realizing, or you notice that this market here specifically on its trend is delivering in this very quick-based fractal stage 1 and stage 2, where it's a smaller variant of the larger stage 1 and stage 2 that you were looking at. So hence why we have these three little dots right here as well, okay? Here we are. That's why we have these three little dots right here representing that exact thing again, where you can have this repeated in any way until the cycle goes through another major flush out. And then all of a sudden you might go through like a bigger flush out, maybe not a super major one, or you might not consider it major. Let's just say it's a normal flush out that leads to either the continuation of these normal stage 1s and 2s. So you might view this thing as a normal stage 1 into continuation of stage 2s. And then, from there, price can, as always, fail if it wants to, or whatever it does, right? You can have that happen, or a new major flush may lead to the restart of the cycle. So a restart into the stage 1 of anticipation of a higher low, right? So this is another way a market could have delivered. Now you can do a number of these over and over and over again, right? For 3, let's say you have a market, it starts, doing whatever, makes a move, maybe it flushes out here, and then all of a sudden it starts building the MBs, it starts a move, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 1, then it flushes out major, right? It starts building those MBs, and then it flushes out, and then it starts an MB1, maybe makes an MB2, moves higher. I'm just doing an example right now. Moves higher, starts a mini fractal 1, fractal 2, fractal 1, fractal 2, major flush out, starts a mini 1, 2, and then starts a fractal 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and then you have full major flush out into no MBs, into full failure. Okay, so this is another way a market might have delivered, just like this. Now, again, this right here is another snowflake of the same thing we're seeing over and over again. We can still pinpoint the general cycle in regards to what we're seeing. And again, we can go over this and see that cycle if we really wanted to, right? The cycle kind of began, and we have what we will call a major flush out somewhere around here, right? This was that initial maybe major flush out. Then from there, we built, because of a major flush out and what it acts as, it creates some kind of anticipation of a higher low, maybe in here or somewhere inside of it, right? That leads to MB formations, which creates a stage 1, which then spawns a stage 2. Now, as the next stage 1 kind of starts getting built, it fails, which we've seen happen, or it becomes like a larger stage 1, which is fine because they're fractals of each other. So we might ignore it for a little bit, right? Because at the time it was starting to deliver many 1s and 2s and 1s and 2s. That's the idea of this guy right here. So I'm, again, trying to color coordinate this for you so you can get a visual of what to look at. But again, I'm not sitting there specifically color coordinating and labeling every single section on any market that I'm watching, right? Because there's specific things I'm looking for, which we'll get into. But I want to showcase what a full cycle of a move can actually end up looking like. And then all of a sudden, you might actually go into a major flush out, which is what happened. And it went to a major flush out that could have ended the market, or it could have spawned into a new stage 1, right? So it might have entered a new stage 1 of the anticipation of a higher low. And all of a sudden, you have a new stage 1 being built from that. And from there, right, if you notice, it starts a minor stage 2 that leads to another flush out. Whether that be a normal flush or a major flush is not very important because, again, it's not about the specific label or about the specific flush that's happening. It's more so about the tendency of a trend, right? So you know that oftentimes from a flush comes the stage 1 or the anticipation of the higher low or the MB formations that lead to a continuation. You're not necessarily 100% certain that you're in any given 1 or 2, or a flush into this one, or this is a fractal and this isn't, because again, you're playing with the market. So this right here, this little move down, can act as or acts as a flush or a major flush, right? It doesn't matter because once it's labeled, the label can change based on how the market actually ends up delivering. That's very important to remember. And you kind of saw examples of that in the 1 hour portal material that we had a few ago. So I think 2 or 3 videos ago that you should have watched, where you saw me walk you through examples of me thinking that a stage 1 was happening, and then it became a bigger stage 1, and it became a bigger flush, and it became a new anticipation of a higher low that started a new MB move. That's exactly what we look for. So I would say this is a new anticipation of a higher low, right? Which again means that we are probably somewhere in this cycle right now. We're going through some kind of accumulation. We are creating a stage 1. And from that stage 1 comes new MBs, new MBs, new MBs that spawn a new stage 2 higher. Now, in this case, the stage 2 is probably a much bigger one. In this case, the stage 2 probably becomes something like this, and the next stage 1 takes place, right, in this action right there. So now we have a stage 1 and stage 2 happening, and we have the inside black flushes of that stage 1, stage 2 delivery, which would be like this flush here, maybe this flush here, and those are creating a hybrid repetitive combo of either normal stage 1s and 2s or fractal stage 1s and 2s. So in this case here, if we do it by just, by orange, you have the delivery in all of this of normal stage 1s and 2s and fractal stage 1s and 2s, right? So you have in green, you have then this stage 2, then this stage 1 that ends up going into failure. And then while that's all happening, in the red, which is the fractals, you also have, because this is kind of what the MBs act as, you have the fractal 1s into 2s, 1s into 2s, 1s into 2s, 1s into 2s, 1s that fail, that become larger, 1s into 2s, and those flushes, these same moments right here, these flushes lead to the creations of either new stage 1s or 2s, or we can count these as major flushes that lead to new stage 1 base anticipation of the higher low, accumulation, stage 1. You should be seeing how these things are coupling together. And how they're together building out a system to understanding trend rather than specifically acting as a one-time label that defines the entire market, okay? Because you already know what defines the entire market. It's the formation of supply and demand, or in our case, of a bullish market, demand validation. And demand validation is seen through a few lenses, one of which is looking at the entry time frame of the EVC and looking for the stage delivery across fractals and normal stage 1s and 2s, and the MBs that come from them as prices flush out, right? Because prices flush out. Those flushes are either major flushes that likely start some new stage 1 that wants to lead into a larger push, or they're intermediary or later flushes that might lead to a few repetitive stage 1s and 2s until failure, right? So in this case here, again, you have the same thing. You know, 1 into 2, 1 into 2, 1 into 2, 1 into 2, 1 into potential 2 into 1 into failure, right? And then it starts maybe building something up over here, and then it fails, right? And then the market becomes a useless one, or a worthless one, as we like to call it, as per the teaching, right? So again, a lot of what we're doing here is understanding how this full cycle here plays in a hybrid setting, where anytime you get one of these major flush outs or flush outs, you're not necessarily certain or sure that it's a major flush or normal flush. And you don't know if the following is that real stage 1 that leads to like these much bigger moves, and then if it's going to even continue. And you don't know necessarily if it's one of these shorter based ones, which is why, as a trader, you learn about the importance of management, and then actually focusing on managing your trades so that by the time you find out whether you're right or wrong, you can actually make some money out of it or milk the profits in the case that you're big time right. Okay. So let's do like one more example where we look at this, and then we'll look at some live examples. So here's 4. Okay. Again, using this full cycle right here. Let's zoom out a little bit. So some kind of major flush. Okay. Some kind of major flush, or just some kind of move down. So let's just say there was a market that's going sideways for a while, right? Whatever it's doing, right? These could be all these sections or settings happening, but you might ignore it because of the way in which it's moving. And then all of a sudden, maybe you get a move, right? And then price comes down, and then whatever, it just fails down. And then maybe you get a major flush, and then all of a sudden, right, some kind of clean, maybe MBs start coming from it, and then maybe a move comes out of it like so, and then it flushes out. Well, already we've played out quite a bit of the move, right? We're actually somewhere here in the move, even at this point, before it even starts to say a very large trend, because we've done whatever, and it's played around, and it's maybe made a few parts of the cycle, but it's failed a few times. And all of a sudden you have this major flush right here, major flush, if you want to call it that, right there. And you then lead into MBs forming, right? And those MBs create longer term stage 1, because now the anticipation of the higher low rule is being met on some level. Anticipation of the higher lows rule is being met on some level, right? Structurally, we're delivering. Stage 2 starts out of that. Within that stage 2 come the mini 1s and 2s that are already occurring, 1s and 2s that are already occurring. And these are, again, potentially for some of you, opportunities on lower time frames already start trading, but we'll look over some of those examples later. And then all of a sudden you get another flush out, right? This is a flush out. Flush. And that flush might act as a major flush or just a normal flush, right? Because again, this flush could lead to a bigger anticipation of a higher low rule that might lead to new MBs, that might lead to a real move higher that then leads to proper stage 1s and stage 2s delivering. And all of a sudden, right, these act as normal intermediate flushes, which would be similarly compared to this one right here. So shorter term intermediary flushes that then lead to this move that then inevitably at some point is going to fail. Okay. So again, this is just another quick example, a quick version of everything you're seeing, right? Then you have the delivery as a result of the stage 1s and 2s throughout all of this until the inevitable failure. And on the way up, you had the mini ones as well that act as some of those smaller MBs, right? So these are all, let's move this out of the way for now, ignore that. So these are all examples just from a diagram level of this snowflake rule in regards to each one of these things representing the same kind of market that is good to be traded, let's say, right? All of these represent what a cycle in a delivering market is oftentimes going to look like. All of these are representations, not necessarily perfect, of what you're generally going to see out of a move if you're going to be able to get positioned, right? And all of them still carry the exact same concepts you've learned so far from the portal section, right? Which is that a lot of these, and as per the specific rule that was provided to you that you now should understand kind of clearly, which is that these moments in time are all working synonymous. They're working together, right? They're working in a very cohesive manner. And at the same time, at any point within that cycle, you need to be wary of and aware that this could be the case, right? That we could be at a moment 3, where basically whatever we're doing, wherever we are, at some point, failure is going to happen. And that failure shouldn't be met with you being disgusted or sad that you're getting the trend wrong or that the asset is not working the way you want it to work. It should just be met with the understanding that the composite operator, the big money, is not interested in this asset at the level that we had once intended or thought that the interest was there for, right? So we are no longer correct about the interest that we thought the composite operator had behind what we're looking at. And then that failure might lead to different developments later on. But beautifully enough, there will be other assets that are not failing, that are moving within the realm of the cycle of delivery, whether it's to the bullish or the bearish side. But right now we're looking at the bullish side, that become tradable events, right? And all of these represent exactly that, right? They all represent that same snowflake delivery, and they all represent in tandem with these continuation repetitions that on average, your entire cycle is going to look a little bit like this. And again, you can distill all of it down to the same thing I taught you before, which is understanding that all of these are a rough blueprint of 1 into 2, 1 into 2, 1 into 2, 1 into 2, nothing more. The entire market can still be distilled down to this understanding right here. That's honestly what's happening. But when we create a few phases to the move, or a few ideas about where we might be in a move, an idea about where we might be in a cycle, we basically gain the upper hand in understanding what can be expected, or what can be expected out of a given move. Like what can this move actually come to? What can it end up doing? Okay, so if we take a look at any of these examples, if we kind of get rid of all the other stuff that we've given it, you can theoretically go as simple as 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, failure. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, failure. Right, so everything can still be distilled down to that stage 1, stage 2. It's just that if you try to distill it all down and only trade from the realm of it's all distilled, everything's just a random box and it's all good, then what's going to happen is you will find yourself getting chopped out more often, or finding yourself trading markets that probably or maybe should not be traded, which is why we layer our understanding. So again, we take an understanding like stage 1, stage 2, stage 1, stage 2, and then we layer it with other tools and elements. So the types of stage 1s and 2s, where we might be in a cycle of stage 1s and 2s, how we view stage 1s and 2s in regards to compactment, how we wait for flush outs to describe and see stage 1s and stage 2s, how we use MBs, or the formation of them, the potential demand validations, to actually enter into a given move to deliver or catch that stage 1, stage 2, right? And then, of course, how we use moving averages to basically frame, to give a plot, a map to the underlying stage 1, stage 2s, right? Which is all the things you're learning right now. So, the point of this is to kind of walk you through some general examples of what a full cycle of a move might look like. This is what tends to be the case, okay? Now, you for yourself, as you get better and better, will have distinct and more distinct rules around what might determine a major flush, what might determine that a stage 1 is like something that you want to trade, what might determine that a flush is ready to be traded or should be avoided, right? Because again, all these moments are showcasing the same thing happening, right? Some kind of stage 1 is happening, some kind of stage 2 is getting ready to happen. Is it worth trading the MB or not? And you're going to have a few variants and tools available to you to decide whether or not it's worth trading or not, and where you want to be a trader or not. So what I can offer you now is I can tell you, there are countless members and traders that I've mentored, and people that are making unbelievable amounts of money that are trading a number of variants of all of this system. Some are trading the MB-based setups out of the initial moves. Some are trading the ones through the continuation. Some are trading the ones like higher up that they're very certain about, like here, and then taking the small profit from here to here and getting out of that trade. Some are trading here to here and getting out of that trade. Some are trading through the MB here and holding through that and holding through that and hopefully getting a bigger runner, right? There are many ways to make trading work for you as an individual. It's just about understanding what works best for the kind of person you are, for the kind of mentality that you have, for the kind of trading that you want to be doing, and for what your own data says, which is something you'll learn about later as well, right? The data end of your actual trading. But yes, this is the cycle and some general examples of the cycle. This is how, on average, markets move and markets function. And again, as per the last video, I advise a lot of you to go to your charts, right? Especially if you've been struggling for a very long time, and try to see from a lens of, you know, this idea here, which you will see because this is how markets move, if you can give a cycle to a given move, or if you can give a cycle to what was going on, because it's going to finally frame and put in, like almost put a lens, almost like rose-colored glasses, right? You're going to start seeing the world in a little bit of a different way. You're going to see the charts in a little bit of a different way. It's going to give a different understanding or interpretation to actual trend to you. And then all of a sudden, your focus goes to actually getting in on those demand validations based on the ones that make sense to you, and you get to trade them higher, okay? So this is what the full cycle actually looks like. In general. Okay, now we're going to look back to the example we had before with this new lens added. And from there, we'll get a little bit better. All right, let's do it.